Today, I have a cracking episode with you, one that is extremely relevant for a lot of blokes. We're going to be talking, or I'm going to be sharing, some of the greatest relationship advice for men today. And this is coming from my own experience. I'm going to give you the top 3 things that I think are important based off a lot of the conversations that I've had with members within our community and also men in our free Facebook group. So a lot of it's coming from my experience that has allowed me to have, well, I've been in a relationship for 8+ years now, which is flying, but it's been a loving, successful in so many ways, an exciting relationship over the past close to a decade. And while I could share a lot of things that I believe that have helped me, I'm going to share the 3 main ones that I believe are important and often overlooked. So the first one being the work you do before and during a relationship really matters. The second one, managing your expectations up front, so thinking about what's important in a relationship, etc. Thirdly, conflict resolution and honest communication, something that is often avoided, and we'll go into that now. So let's dive straight into it. The work you do before or during a relationship is some of the most important work you will ever do. Often, many of us haven't done much work on ourselves when we're going into a relationship, right? A lot of men out there are carrying insecurities, resentment, anger, and all that happens when we get into a relationship after that honeymoon period wears off is we start to project that, right? And as a result of projecting that, jealousy can come up in so many different ways, the insecurities and almost the possessiveness. And I know for myself in previous relationships, as I'd never done much work on myself, I had a lot of issues. I was jealous, like I mentioned, I was angry, I was insecure. So when I got into relationships, because that was going on in my own head, I found ways to project that. I started always wanting to check text messages, understand where they were at all points. If I saw my ex-partners talking to blokes, I got really, really jealous and aggressive and found a way to manipulate. And it's toxic. So the work that you're doing now, if you're in a position where you experience jealousy can be a great thing, but it can also be an extremely toxic thing. So come back for next Thursday's episode where I dive into jealousy in a whole heap more detail, but understanding how that sort of portrays out. So understanding, all right, in my relationship right now, are my insecurities playing out in a bad way? Could they be putting stress on the relationship? Could my partner be dealing with my mood swings, right? As even my current partner or my wife, Amy, dealt with a lot through the start of our relationships. So I guess the first point we're looking at there is doing the work before, if you're not in a relationship, I'm talking to you, or if you are in a relationship, getting comfortable with who you are, right? Building up your own self-esteem and learning to love yourself. Because if you have a poor relationship with yourself, you're always going to be battling with that, am I good enough for my partner experience? And that can be fucking toxic. So first and foremost, start thinking about the work that you're doing. I guess when you identify areas that you need to work on, okay, for example, weaknesses, chinks in your armor, start asking yourself questions around that, right? Find books, listen to podcasts like you're doing right now that can educate you, right? And when something resonates with you, for example, anger, resentment may not be landing with you, but the insecurities or the jealousy may be landing with you. So in that case, go search and research more on jealousy and why it arises, healthy and unhealthy jealousy. Like I said, check back for next podcast. Because it can all be helpful for you, and then you can gather all this information and make your own decisions around how you can improve that, right? By practicing mindfulness even, and sitting and thinking and answering questions, you can gain a greater understanding around that. And that's what you want to do in order to build a really powerful, impactful, loving, caring relationship. Because if you avoid that stuff, if you just go, oh, it'll bury itself. No, it fucking won't. It'll always rear its head. And when you don't want it to. So put the work in, gents. That's the first thing that I think is extremely important. Obviously, not needing constant validation. So, like I said, the relationship with yourself, it projects what's going on in your life. The second, I guess, sub part to that is always having something is creating a path for yourself. Right? If you're really confused with who you are as an individual, in my opinion and from my experience, when I didn't know what I wanted from my life or where I was going, the last thing I needed was a relationship. The last thing that I needed was someone to care for, because I couldn't care for myself. I couldn't direct someone else. And often in relationship, a really great relationship thrives off certainty, thrives off direction, thrives off guidance, right? And this works both ways. So if you're lacking that, you need to find that within yourself. And it goes back to, like I said, asking yourself questions. What do you need to figure out? And I gave an example on a reel on Instagram yesterday, was choose 8 things that you enjoy doing, right? Choose those 8 things and give yourself a month timeline to experience them. Within that, you're going to find out things that you enjoy, things that you don't, and you can ask more questions. What did I enjoy about that? What didn't I enjoy about that? And then you can move forward. Right? You can utilize that feedback. The same goes with figuring out who you are and what you want to create for your life. Is do that. Explore what's available to us now. Do you want a flexible lifestyle? Do you want a certain amount of income? Do you want a connected family? What do you want? Start exploring that and create direction for yourself, because when you meet that partner, right, that's going to allow you to have expectations. That's going to allow you to have boundaries, because what happens if the person that you end up with has completely different long-term goals to you and you're not prepared to compromise? This is why divorce is so high, or one of the reasons why divorce is so high. Because one, people don't communicate effectively and they don't talk about what they want. Their dreams, desires, and ambitions don't align. So it makes sense to not be together. So if you're clear on that, it really helps you be assertive from the start. Share your boundaries and expectations, and if people align with that, and it's not about being controlling, it's about finding the right people to fit into your life. This is what it's all about. People go, oh, that's controlling, or that's manipulative, or that's, you're not allowing for too much flexibility in that. Well, if that's how you see it, but statistics see it otherwise. When you're certain around what you want, you can understand what kind of people you want to spend time around with, what boundaries you need, what expectations, and I'll talk about this in a moment, how this has worked out in my life. And the final thing as well is understanding that love is not enough. The work that you do within a relationship, not only on yourself, but for the relationship, matters more than the feeling of love itself. There are a lot of people who are in loving relationships that are extremely toxic. Think to yourself, is that a relationship you would want to be in? Sure as shit, not one that I want to be in. My last relationship was very toxic, and I was probably the main perpetrator with that. So now that I think about that, I understand that I love my wife and my wife loves me, but I also know that every day I need to show up in a way that's respectful, right? It's maybe fun, it may be charismatic, it may be a whole range of characteristics, but that's important that I don't stop putting that time and energy into that, and vice versa. It's an expectation that we have. Our relationship means so much to us. Oh, Christ, we got fucking married. Therefore, the expectations that we have is we want to keep it fun. If we're in this for the long haul, I don't want to get bored with it. I still want to feel attracted. I still want to feel attractive. Right? So they're expectations. So understanding that love's not enough. This sort of ties us into point 2, managing your expectations up front. What's important within the relationship? Right? Things like stability, desirability, communication, adventure, feeling valued, feeling heard. Are they things that you expect? For me, I know I expect myself to not get slack. Right? One belief that I've grown up knowing is that often men, once we get to a certain age, we allow that top belt to sort of blow out a few knots, the beer belly comes, and I see men time and time again who neglect their family because they're going to the pub with the boys. For me, that's not an expectation that my wife has for me, and we've discussed this. An expectation is, yes, you can go catch up with mates and stuff, but I'll never put her behind going to the pub and just getting pissed. Not going to happen. And the most important thing when you're setting these expectations is understanding that the expectations can change, right? So when you move into a relationship, Right? One of the expectations, maybe this is one, or a fairly common one for people, is you're not sleeping around. Expectation number one. 2, you spend time together. You connect. You have adventures. Right? 3, you value each other. You make each other feel heard. You make a certain amount of time for each other. What happens the following year? You might have kids together. You might take a different role or a promotion within work. And once again, there's expectations that are moving and molding around. So what you need to be aware of is what's going on in your life. So that when you, have a conversation, and it might come up through conflict, which we'll talk about in a moment, or it may just come up because you organize time to sit down and talk about your life and time together and how you're both feeling. So once you understand, those expectations, you can have a yarn about them, and they may be different year upon year. Once you have a mortgage, right, you might be under more financial stress. So therefore the expectation is that, hey, I'm okay and I'm comfortable with you working an extra 2 hours a day. That's going to help us achieve our goal with why we've bought this investment. As a result of this, right, as these expectations are being managed, we need to understand what our roles are within the relationship. And I'll use my current relationship as an example, and it's very different to a lot of people, right? I wouldn't say I'm the main breadwinner, even though I run a company, and so does my wife. I've over time gone from I need to prove myself, I need to be the breadwinner, to now understanding, hey, I need to be the supportive partner, I need to support my wife in her career, but I also still need to have that boundary and that expectation that I can pursue my own passions and build something for myself as well. And as a result, it's, if I'd fully sacrificed ever having something for myself to be that supportive partner, I feel I would become resentful and angry over time, because in the back of my head, I still want to feel like I have a purpose bigger than myself. And obviously that being a supportive husband ticks that box, but so does the Man That Can project. So think about your roles in the relationship, and are they being met? Have they been spoken about? And do they work for you guys as a relationship, right? The traditional roles is that the wives generally stay at home, raise the children, look after the house, and the men go out and protect and provide. That is changing, right? So you need to understand those dynamics for your specific relationship. And you need to make sure that you're checking in regularly, because once again, like I said, life is changing so rapidly and roles are changing. So work out what's going to work well for you guys to have a successful relationship. What does that look like? Let's go. Some other expectations just quickly. Like I said, you don't want to have that beer belly. I was listening to a funny podcast the other day, and this bloke was speaking about his own experience, and he said, mate, I let myself go. When I was about 43, I grew the beer belly. I was drinking a lot of booze, and I was unfucking desirable. I wouldn't have fucked me. And his wife eventually said to him, because they had this relationship, she said, I married you when you were fit and healthy. You were charming. You put energy into it. And she said, I wanted to make love with you. I wanted to get intimate, but now you're just not a reflection of that. I don't, feel like you're desirable. I don't feel like I want to make love with you. And while that may be hard to take, and it'll tie us into this next point around conflict resolution and honest communication, it's something that we need to be mindful of. It's not about being offensive. It's about, well, what did you get into this for? What brought you guys together in the beginning? Obviously, there's some sexual attraction at the beginning. It often always is. It really is, because you don't know whether you trust someone. You don't know whether you value or connect on a certain level with people. That comes after. That comes from spending time together. So if you got together for that reason, then that's probably still something that's important to you. It may not be as important, but it's still something that I would say is very important. And it's, like I said, it's important to me. And I know it's important to my wife. I don't want to be a slob. So having those expectations, and that's just one example, but think about it across all areas of your life. As I was saying, it sort of leads us into conflict resolution. So many relationships struggle to communicate effectively. And Amy and myself were in this boat in the beginning. And I would say, if I can be completely transparent, a lot of that came from my baggage that I brought into it. Amy, and not to blow her own trumpet, but I fell on my feet when I met her, purely because she has always been understanding. She has always made me feel valued. She's always challenged me. and she communicates so fucking well. And because I was at a point in my life where I was like, well, I want to turn my life around. I don't want to fuck up another relationship. And I want to feel happy. I realized that I could learn a lot from her. And I've learned a lot from her, her family, and then so many other experts around communication, negotiation, and various things like this. Okay? And what that has helped us do is build such a connected, deep relationship where we're on path. We've both got our individual goals, but we're working together to create something quite fucking exciting, I believe. And, we also do feel connected and have a love that is, it's hard to put into words, but it just feels fucking good all the time. I never have to stress about it. Occasionally I feel jealous, but not in a bad way. Just more so like it makes me appreciate how lucky I am and what a beautiful wife that I have. So what I want to dive into around that conflict resolution is if you can't communicate openly, if you can't communicate honestly, first point of call is starting, well, why not? What do I need to work on? How can I have these conversations? Is it because I don't feel valued or heard? Is it because I feel some kind of guilt or shame around what I want to bring up? Which all normal, first and foremost, it's all normal. But if it is, what do you need to work on in order to be able to have that? Is there also an element of not being able to respond, more so reacting? Because I know for such a long period of my time, I would just fly off the rails, absolutely fly off the rails when something was brought to my attention that I maybe didn't want to hear, maybe some truths about how I was acting, how I was behaving. And it could be as simple as this, right? It could be as simple as you've been a lazy prick around the house. You haven't taken the garbage out. You're leaving your clothes all over the place. You haven't helped at all. And often it's easy to jump and go, well, I've been at work all day or I've been doing this, which, that's you justifying and bringing up and creating another problem. It's not about that. What is the issue is what's been spoken about, right? So how can you resolve that? And often people try to avoid, and I'll put my hand up here, I try to avoid conflict because it makes me feel uneasy. But if you avoid conflict, all you're doing is just burying it, right? Eventually it's going to fester itself in another way. Conflict has the ability, if you learn to do it well, and this is once again why you need to be working on yourself individually as a man, and your partner should be working on themselves as well, right? Because communication is so individualistic, right? I don't even know if that's a word. It can be. That you need to understand your communication style, how you like to be communicated to, so that you can communicate about that and best have these platforms or these moments where you can discuss these things and overcome them or compromise a little bit and build a game plan to move forward. If you aren't doing that, what's the out? What do you have to do? You need to find a way to move through this and understand that it's not going to be comfortable always. But two things happen, right? You're either going to grow apart as a result of constant conflict, which is once again a lot of people do, but it's because they don't resolve the conflict. They keep coming at each other, but then they put their head in the sand, they storm off, they change the whole conversation to something else that they're angry about, and they don't ever go back to that main thing. So it just keeps building resentment or anger or fucking just layer upon layer, which you don't want. So you need to learn to resolve that conflict. Do you feel valued? Do you feel heard? Do you have the ability to sit there and listen? Do you have the ability to address the issues? Do you have the ability to take emotion out of it and sit there and work through it logically to negotiate and work out what I guess the conflict could be, right? The conflict for me, or what's the current conflict I've got in my life at the moment? Well, it's not even a conflict anymore, but one that was when Amy would go on tour. Often at the beginning, once again, I was insecure, I was jealous, a whole heap of stuff was going on. But over time, that has changed because, as point one is, do the fucking work on yourself and work through these things, because as a man, you need to be responsible for that. Don't expect other people to change who they are for you. You need to change yourself if it's important enough. You need to change yourself into the man that takes responsibility for your emotions, for your finances, for your health, for your relationships. It's what can I do to better my life? That's how you need to be thinking. So from that conflict resolution, if you're going to grow together, yes, you're going to have some tough conversations, but you need to be able to be strong enough to sit there and work through it. You need to be able to understand how to navigate it, how to manage the energy through it in order to get the outcomes that is going to suit both of you, right? It's not about always getting what you want. It's getting what's best. I'm tongue-tied. What is best for the relationship. If that's what you want, is a great relationship. So they're my top 3 things that I think a couple are often overlooked. Some of it can be uncomfortable to talk about, and I'd love to have this conversation with you. So if you're in the free Facebook group, share the link to the podcast and start discussing, or DM me on one of the social platforms, and let's have a discussion about what's worked well for you or what advice you would give with a great relationship. Because like I said, there's so much we could go into. They were just the top 3. So I guess in conclusion, relationships take work, constant work, as does anything that you want to be successful in. And relationships are also proven to be such an important part in people's lives, right? To feel that love, to feel that connection, to be a part of something. So if it's that important to you, put the time into it, put the energy into it, and understand that, hey, yeah, while things may be going great, what else can you learn? Learning never stops. Relationships continue to evolve. And if you think about, how much your life has changed over the last 10 years, whether you're in a relationship or not, it's only going to compound, right? Because you have greater understandings, you have beliefs that you're rock solid in, you have beliefs that maybe you're sort of not solid on. And that's going to continue to change, grow, and evolve. So understand that, and understand the same is going to happen for people that you're in a relationship with, okay? So you need to be keeping your finger on the pulse, having the conversations, addressing your boundaries, your expectations, and being able to really work through those conversations. So thank you guys for listening. If you gained value, please do me a solid and share this episode, leave some comments, or even just have a conversation with myself. I look forward to getting to meet more of you guys within the Strong Men of Value Academy, where we have conversations like this every week. It's brilliant fun, and we get to hear other people's opinions and perspectives. But for now, I'm signing off. Do one thing today that is going to make you better for tomorrow.